your friendly librarian, and I'm back with some book chat. As you can see, things have gotten rather complicated around here and a little cluttered with all my different projects going on. I've had a hard time finding a dedicated amount of time to sit down and make a video, and then I just keep getting deeper and deeper in. So I'm going to film as much as I can today, and I may have to splice a couple days together because I know I have a meeting in less than an hour on Zoom, so it is what it is. I also wanted to get on here and make sure that I was able to do my recommended drink, which is from Bardwell Winery. Caramel apple sangria. It's amazing, but there's no way it's gonna last very much longer. I already had to go and get a refill for my growler. Actually, I don't think they call it a growler there. What do they call it? A pint, maybe? No, it's more than that. I don't know. I'll show it to you later in the video, but let me take a break and get these books off the table so I can figure out what it is I'm supposed to be talking about. So first of all, I'd probably like to highlight my shirt. It says, "This is terrible, keep going." It is from My Favorite Murder, which is one of my favorite podcasts. I've recommended it on my channel several times. I know it sounds like it's really like macabre and like depressing, and it's not. It's just really informative. They dive into the stories. It's a way of therapy for them, and I guess for us too, because it's just, they're so interesting. And I think that it's really important to tell people stories. First and foremost, your own story, but then also people who maybe didn't get a chance to tell theirs. So I really enjoy the podcast. I highly recommend it, and I love them. I just really love them. So if you follow along with me on social media, you know on Facebook I've been recommending a lot of the Lillian Jackson Braun, the Cat Who series, and I have finished adding all of the book recommendations to Goodreads. I've read them all in the past, but I did not have them all on Goodreads, so I have finished adding all of those. But there are a couple of little ones, like I already read and reviewed this, The Private Life of Cat Who, but there's another one that I'm finishing right now. It's The Short and Tall Tales. So when I get that finished, then I'm going to do a separate video just for the Lillian Jackson Braun. And I have talked about her in some of my previous videos for the cozy mystery. She's definitely one of my favorite cozy mystery authors, and this series is one of my very favorite. I talked to you in my last video about I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness. This is one of those books that Reese's Book Club mailed me. Thankfully, thank you, Reese's Book Club. And I read back a while ago, but whenever I previewed it in the video, I had not put the review up on Goodreads, so I added that one. A book that I did recently finish, one of my students let me borrow. It's called A Place of Guardians. It's by Bethany Korn. It's the first one in a series. I want to say there's maybe 3 in the series. It is self-published. She started publishing in 2013. And like I said, one of my students really enjoyed it, and I said, you know, I love to read anything. So I read that one, and that was really good. It was a vampire, supernatural kind of book, and she's just setting up the series in that first book, and I know she just published a new one. So check out Bethany Korn. She does sell those books on Amazon. You would think just because it's coming from a freshman girl that this is a young adult book. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's just for young adults. I would think it's more, you know, young adult through maybe 20-somethings. And again, I'm 47 and I enjoy these books. I enjoy a wide variety of books. But that's A Place of Guardians by Bethany Korn, and I'm sorry I don't have the book to show you. Another book that I know I've talked to you about quite a bit is American Dirt by Janine Cummins. This is an Oprah's Book Club 2020. Our book club read it back in maybe August or September, and this is one of those books that I'm like, I don't care who you are or what kind of books you like, this is a must read. I really, it's hard to say I enjoyed the book because it's a very painful journey. And my Wi-Fi is not working, so I can't seem to access my video before to make sure how much I had actually talked to you about it. But this is one of those books that it just tells us a very unique story. I know there's a lot of controversy. How about that one? One of my students borrowed it and he left his picture in there, so I'm gonna have to return that to him. Wonder if his mama's missing that. It tells a very painful story of a lady and her son in Mexico. They live a very ordinary, average life, and then one day their whole world is turned upside down and they are forced to flee. They are trying to get north. They have to ride on that terrible train that we've heard about. and you get to follow along in their story. So to say that I enjoyed the book is kind of a misnomer, but her language, her writing, the story, it's not one that I've heard before, and I am so glad that I finally sat down and read this book. I'm sure my friend Stephanie would tell you, she often will recommend books to me. She recommended this to me a long time ago, and I'm like, oh, that sounds painful, that sounds depressing. I don't know why I always say that before I start reading a book, and then those are the books that really stick with me. They really hit home, I guess. But I would highly recommend American Dirt by Janine Cummins. Another book that I have already talked to you about, but I didn't have the review up the last time I talked to you on Goodreads, is... It has two titles. There was a working title, I guess, and then maybe they settled on a different one. But it's Too Much to Ask, or A Million Reasons Why. It's by Jessica Strawser, who's a local Ohio author. I read it by Netgalley. Again, thank you, Netgalley. They sent that to me a while back. It will be published on March 23rd of 2021. So put it on your list, especially for fans of like Jodi Picoult. I think you're really going to like Jessica Strawser if you've not read her before. I had not. This is my first one by her. You do get that bit of a twist there in the end that you like with the Jodi Picoult books, so it feels like that. It's also taking something that maybe you haven't thought about before, and in this case it is, there is a set of sisters. They do not know that the other one exists. They fill out the DNA tests that we know are out there, and through that test they find out about each other. One of them is gravely ill. She does need something from the other person if somebody else out there exists, and she does. So it gets rather complicated, but I feel like it's a good balance between that, like the moral dilemma of what is too much to ask, and the issues that some of these DNA tests are bringing up, like when you find out that your parents might have other children. So I think it's a balance between some of those things and just really good story that's wrapped around it. The other thing I really like is there is major growth of characters in the story, and not just like the main one, but several surrounding characters really come around and change their way of thinking. There's definitely no right or wrong kind of thinking in this book. I wouldn't say that at all, but somebody definitely changes, and I just think that's interesting. I love a character-driven story. I love it. Another book that I recently finished was Holiday Grind by Cleo Coyle. She does the Coffee House Mysteries. I have a number of her books in print, but this particular one I did not, so I read it online. I read it through an ebook through the library, and the library carries, I do believe, most of the series on ebook or audiobook. I think I might have listened to the audio one of this one now that I'm saying that out loud. So I don't have one to show you, but here are some of hers. And she's another one that I plan to do a separate video on, Cozy Mysteries, and I'll dive into it a little bit more there. But it is called Holiday Grind, so it will be a good holiday book coming up. I hope to get a chance to talk to you about some of the Halloween and fall reading that I did or that I recommend. I know it's past time. I had every intention of filming this video before Halloween ever came through, but alas, such is life. But I would really recommend Holiday Grind. I did the audio, I made notes. This was published in 2010, so it's been out there a while, but it's a nice holiday theme, and I love a good holiday theme cozy mystery. The books usually also include some recipes, which are fun. I've never tried to actually follow any of them, but I do love that they include those in there. I think it's a nice touch. These are what I would call a culinary mystery because they are always based around that coffee shop. You do get some coffee talk, like how to make it, or how to pick out good coffee, how to grind good coffee. Like those things are always in her books because it happens in a coffee shop, but they also have quite a bit of culinary information in there too. This one actually has Santa Claus, so again, pick up Holiday Grind by Cleo Coyle. It's a good holiday cozy mystery. So after I read Holiday Grind, I'm like, I feel like I could do another one pretty quickly because on those audiobooks, they're good ones that I like to read, or I like to listen to, when I have a project that does not take a lot of thought, but it takes time, so I can listen to an audiobook while it's happening. Holiday Grind is number 8, Roast Mortem is number 9. In Roast Mortem, there's an arsonist on the loose, and again, he's targeting this coffee shop, so we are a little concerned for Claire and her coffee shop and if it's going to survive till the end of the book. This is not the last book in the series, so I'm pretty sure she survives. You also get quite a bit of talk about New York City and New York City life, which is fun. So I would highly recommend any of the Cleo Coyles. They're all fun. I also really like the print books. I just really enjoy the covers. I think they're also very well done. No cats or dogs on there, so, you know, who knows. But there is coffee, so that's always a good thing. I'll do a whole video with the Cleo Coyles at some point. So like A Place of Guardians, I read another self-published book. This one was by Morgan Bryant. She's across the hall from me. She's one of my fellow English teachers. Her book is called Impossibly Perfectly Normal. It's a beautiful cover, and it's a great example of a self-published book on Amazon. Again, I was really interested to see this whole process, but her contact information is on here. I will link everything below. A friend of mine, the other girl that we teach English, Stephanie, we went to her book signing that she had in a park, socially distanced, right there at the end of the summer. And it's an enjoyable book. I think this and A Guardian, A Place of Guardians, they fit well together. I read them both in a week. Super easy to get through because they're just enjoyable, fun reads. So fantasy, instead of vampires and werewolves and a human girl, this one is a fast-paced love triangle between a human girl, vampire, and an owl that is also a person. So still that fantasy supernatural story going on there, teenage, a romance, that love triangle trope. If you did enjoy Twilight and you're missing something that's similar like that, this is a good one. A Place of Guardians is a good one. Both of those definitely feed into that enjoyment of reading about that supernatural. What should I do here when I fall in love with someone who's not human? It's also a great size to be able to just throw in your bag so that you can get it read on the fly. And I always love to recommend to you books like that so that you don't feel like you always have to pull out your phone and flip through social media when you've got a few minutes. If you have a book that's very lightweight and this great size, it's a good one to be able to throw in your bag to be able to pull out and read a chapter when you've got a few minutes. I think that Morgan will inspire a lot of people to pick up pen and paper and say, you know what, she wrote that and she had the guts to publish it, so I'm going to finish that book that I've started and really dive into that now that we are all spending more time at home, either quarantined or just staying at home until this whole vaccine thing gets figured out. Or I guess that's a little old-fashioned. I guess I'm going to put my fingers to the keyboard and get this thing done. So we're coming up on Christmas time, and this will be another good one to support a local author. You can purchase it on Amazon. It'll be a great stocking stuffer or a great gift for any young adult who likes to read fantasy, supernatural, love stories. Another young adult book that I recently finished and quickly is A Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. He was a National Book Award finalist. You can see there are a lot of book awards on there. This is one that I book talked in my class in room 134. You can see we also tabbed a lot of figurative language that is in there, and I was able to read a lot of really great writing examples to them. This is one of those books that is a novel in poetry, but the whole thing tells one specific story, and it is the story of a young man whose brother is killed violently in the street, and it's his story of what does he do next. Does he avenge his brother's death? How does he deal with that? How is his mother dealing with that? What happens in your neighborhood when someone is killed? So just super, super good. Great story, great writing, a great example of one of those books that's written in that format. I love that. So pick it up. He's the writer in residence somewhere. During the pandemic, he came online and gave a lot of writing prompts, so you can still find those videos online too. It's also a great example of one of those books that, even though it goes by very fast, there are things about this that are really going to stick with me. The numbers on the front cover that I just kind of looked at and then started reading, and then as I was reading, there would be these pages that had numbers on them, and I'm like, what is going on? What is that all about? It really shows that it's a very well thought out and planned book, so it is as much visual as it is a literary story. I highly recommend for a good quick read, A Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. Another young adult book that I read pretty quickly was The Sky is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson. I have also read Jandy Nelson's other book, I'll Give You the Sun. I'm not sure that I've reviewed that one before, so probably need to put that one on the list. The front cover says, one boy helps her remember and the other lets her forget. This story is about a young girl, she's in high school, and her sister dies suddenly. Like unexpectedly and suddenly, and they're very close. They're being raised by their grandmother and their uncle, so she has already experienced quite a bit of loss, and she is trying to work through that loss. So again, yes, it's dark. I need to find some happy books for you. It is very dark, but it's an enjoyable read. The story is good. The voice is good. The character development is good. There are also some, again, visual elements that are in there. So she writes, the main character, she writes little notes and leaves them laying around. And one of the two boys that she is getting to know rather well after her sister's death, one of them finds these notes. So that's a big part of the story too. I really enjoyed it. I read it because I saw one of my kids in first period pick it up, and it was a boy that picked it up, and he got through it really quickly, so I was like, that's interesting. And like I said, I'd already read her other one, the I'll Give You the Sun, and again, I enjoyed it. I think it's a great example of good modern young adult literature. Apple TV has picked it up. They're going to make the movie of The Sky is Everywhere, so be on the lookout for that. Sherry Jones is going to play the grandmother. Jason Segel is going to play the uncle. I'm not sure that they've come out with who is going to play the main character in here or either of the two love interests, but I'm excited to see this one. It's a good exploration of teenage grief. I think that this is a good one. You know, it's hard to hand someone a book about grief when they're going through it, but sometimes when they read it and they can look back on something in their life and how they dealt with grief, I think this book will give teens permission to grieve in their own way. Okay, I'm going to have to take a break. I've got to go do a Zoom meeting, and then I hope to get back, and you'll know if I made it because I'll be in the same shirt and it'll be dark in here again, right? Okay, I'm back from my meeting. Here's what I was talking about before. It's Bardwell Winery, and it's not quite a growler. I don't know exactly what the terminology is, but it is the caramel apple sangria, and it's amazing. Bardwell Winery is in Mount Orb. We had our last book club meeting there. I really want to put a shout out to Bardwell Winery for letting our book club meet there during these kinds of times. They helped us socially distance. We had our own space, and I just really appreciate it. The next book that I finished is Ripped from the Pages. It's by Kate Carlisle, another one of my favorite cozy authors. I am part of Kate's readers, and that means that she does send me free copies of her books from time to time in exchange for an honest review, which I'm always honest, but luckily I really love her writing, and I keep up with both of her series. This is part of the Bibliophile mystery series. She also has a Fixer-Upper mystery series that I read and enjoy. And I'm planning on doing a separate video for Kate Carlisle too. So I've got some things in the works, but I'm just really struggling trying to keep up with creating the content for teaching a brand new subject and still being able to do my YouTube videos. This is number 9 in the series. There are 15 that are currently published in the Bibliophile series, so I am doing a bit of a catch-up. I went back and wanted to read them all in order, of course. This is not one of those that I did get for free for being one of her readers. When I go to Half Price Book, there's always a number of authors and titles that I'm looking for. And I just happened to visit one time when there were numerous paperback copies in this series there. So I really enjoy them and I picked them up, and I'm glad that I was able to actually read the paperback copy of this and not just the ebook. This series takes place in Northern California when they're actually at the winery that her parents live and help operate. Our main character is Brooklyn, and she fixes up books. The book at the center of this mystery is Journey to the Center of the Earth. Their apartment in San Francisco is being renovated, so they go to stay close to her parents who live in a commune that is set on a winery. It's called Dharma. So just one of my favorite series, and I really enjoy reading these or listening to the audio or flipping through the ebook. Always highly recommend Kate Carlisle. The next book that I finished this past month was The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. You can see this is a really old copy. It's from our library, so I usually only talk to you about the ones that I have in my library. This is completely falling apart, so I'm in the market for a new copy of The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. I read quite a bit of it to my freshman and senior classes, and then we watched part of the movie, and then we compared the two mediums, the book to the movie. The movie was a cartoon animated movie from 1996. It's also well worth watching, but man, I had a really hard time tracking it down. I ended up having to buy the DVD on Amazon because it doesn't seem to stream anywhere. But oh, so good. Both the book and the movie, even though it appears to be like children's or young adult, it has some really serious things in there and gives you a lot of history about Halloween. Thoroughly enjoyed it, thoroughly enjoyed Bradbury's writing, and I was really happy I got to share that with my class. definitely put this on your list next year. Put it on your calendar and say, hey, I'm going to read The Halloween Tree during the month of October because it was a great seasonal read with good historic background. So my next read was Vampires, Bones, and Treacle, Scones. I don't know if I'm saying that right or not. It's by Caitlin Dunnett. This is a bit of a disappointment. You know, I'm always trying to give you an honest review, and quite frankly, I like or either love most of the books that I read. I can appreciate them for different things, whether it's, you know, a cozy mystery and it's comforting, or like American Dirt, where it's really well-written literature, a modern story, a unique story. So I can appreciate books for all kinds of things. This one, quite frankly, though, just really wasn't worth the read for me. I will not continue with this series. It's called A Liz McCrimmon Scottish Mystery. The other thing I think there is just because I've found so many really great cozy mystery series that I like that I don't want to waste my time on ones that I don't just really like, right? So I love the cover. I picked this up. I highlighted it in one of my book hauls from one of my previous videos. But the cover is adorable because it's got the skeleton and the cat and the dog is dressed up for Halloween. I love a good seasonal read, but this one just didn't have enough for me to want to get to know the characters anymore. So probably not going to recommend this one, but it'll make a pretty decoration on my mantle each Halloween. Okay, this book deserves its own video, so I am not going to act like I can sit here and in 2 minutes give you a good talk about House of Leaves. It's House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This is the remastered full color edition. Seriously, could do a whole video on this book. I was introduced to this book by one of our seniors last year. We had a humanities club that met and he suggested this book. So I bought it because it is very visual. I know that makes it look like, oh my gosh, well, if that's all that's on a page, I could probably read it too. The other pages are more like this. But it's a very visual book. It's unique. I've never seen anything like it. I think that maybe I could describe it to you like the Blair Witch Project. If you watch that movie and you can tell like how original and unique that kind of film was, that's what this is in a book. And it's kind of a very similar story. You're not sure if it's truth or is it fiction. You're not sure if you're getting an unreliable narrator or if this person is sane and telling you their experiences. There are several people. There are the people that lived through the experience. There are the people who ran across the book talking about the experience, or the notes, I guess, at that point. So I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I finally made it through it because it has been probably a year that I have read it, picked it up, sat it down, picked it up, sat it down. And this time I'm just like, look, I am going to get through this during the month of October. And I did, but it's also that book that like I can't take to bed and read and then go to sleep because it was going to give you nightmares. It is freaky, but it's just a really cool kind of, I don't know, like the format of the book, without me just flipping through every page, is hard to show you that it's a combination of notes, transcripts, a narrative, letters, it's crazy. It's crazy, but it's crazy good. The premise of the story is that a family moves into a house and they find out that the house is bigger on the inside than it actually is on the outside. And people can get lost in the house. They can enter basically what I would call like other dimensions. The couple has children, so especially freaky there. And so then when people come and try and figure out what's going on, it's a mystery. And it drives people crazy. So that's the premise of the story. It's freaky and it's really good. So I have no problem recommending this book, but it's another one that I would put on my October list, maybe even September and October, because it's heavy. Like, it's not something that you want to sit down and spend hours in because it's a dark place to be. The last book that I read, and I've already put out a Goodreads review on, is Scenes from the Hallway. It's by Penny Reid. This is a short prequel companion to the Marriage of Inconvenience. So it's technically 6.5 in the Knitting in the City series, but it's a hard one to find. I think that I probably got a copy of it in my email newsletter from Penny Reid. Penny Reid writes Smarty Pants Romance. That she founded that, and now she has people that write under her, under that basic like label. They are steamy romance, so caution, they're adult books. I still think they're like that I have a hard time saying young adult because they're not for high schoolers. Definitely that 20 to 30 something young professional who's looking for romance books that get really steamy, but also have a really good backstory to them. I've talked about Penny Reid before, but her stories connect. She has a number of different series, and her stories connect in different ways. So it will often be a book that's more of a character study about a particular one, and then you might read that person's best friend's story in a different series. So it's complicated, but not so complicated that you can't keep up with it. They are great printouts on Goodreads, and Penny Reid's website is fabulously done. I had finished a Books and Bagpipes and Talked to You. It's by Paige Shelton in my previous videos, but I did not put a review out there for some reason, so I did update that on Goodreads if you were looking for it. It is from the Scottish Bookshop Mystery Series. It's number 2 in that series. And that's another reason why I feel confident saying, hey, I don't really recommend this one, but I do definitely recommend the Scottish Bookshop Mystery Series. There are enough out there that are really good that I just don't want to waste my time on one that I wasn't thrilled with. If you follow me on social media, you know I also shared that Kate Carlisle has a preview out there for Premeditated Murder. It's her next book that's coming up in the Fixer Upper series, and you can get a preview of that, a free excerpt from that, by following my social media. I know that I put it there. And again, I probably got that through her newsletter, either through her email newsletter or by following her on Facebook, and then she shares that kind of free information. I love freebies. So I'm pretty sure that wraps up the books that I've read since my last video. So hopefully I have talked you into looking up one of these. Highly recommend a lot of them. House of Leaves. Not really recommending Vampires, Bones, and Treacle Scones. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. The Halloween Tree. Highly recommend. Kate Carlisle, Ripped from the Pages. Highly recommend. The Sky is Everywhere. Highly recommend. A Long Way Down. Highly recommend. Impossibly Perfectly Normal. Highly recommend. American Dirt. Highly recommend. And I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness, which I talked to you about in a different video, but I did just put up that review. So a quick little chat about some books that I've gone back and made sure that I put reviews on Goodreads that I highly recommend. And that would be the Merlot Murders. This series by Ellen Crosby. It's a wine country mystery series. And again, cozy mystery, so easy to read. These are enjoyable. I know, like, this is the Merlot Murders. One of our other one is called the Chardonnay Charade. So cute, catchy titles. There's also Moscow Nights. I like that there's a map at the beginning of the book because, again, this takes place in wine country at a vineyard. So it's part of the county and that wine country. So I enjoy that. It's in Virginia, so we're not talking about California wine. We're talking about Virginia wine. These are by Ellen Crosby. This is number 10, so it's another one of those cozy mystery series that would take you a while to get through. I read the paperback. I'm not sure if there's an audio version. I think it would be a fun audio version. The main character is Lucy Montgomery. She's being called back home to deal with her parents who have passed away. They have a vineyard. I think it's her brother who's running the vineyard, needs some help. So it's that kind of story. It's in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It does follow that trope of somebody who needs to come home to save the family business, and then there appears to be an accident and she's got to track that down. So just a fun read. I highly recommend it. Another book that I recently put a recommendation out there for and a review on Goodreads is Wonder by R.J. Palacio? I don't know if that's right or not, but this is in one of my recent book hauls, so I made sure to add a review for you on Goodreads. It's also a fabulous movie. There are very few books that I feel like span a lot of ages, but I think you can read this from about, I'm going to go with 5th grade, about 5th grade on, and definitely through adulthood. This is one of those books that you would enjoy reading. It's told from various point of views. So you get a parent's point of view, you get the kid's point of view, a brother or a sister's point of view. I think it's a sister's point of view. But it's just a great story about humanity. It's a good reminder for us all. Attachments is another book that I think I had previewed for you in a book haul not too long ago. So I went ahead and updated that review on Goodreads for that too. I read this book in June of 2014 and it still sticks with me. I love anything that Rainbow Rowell writes. I have enjoyed many of her books. Eleanor and Park and Fangirl, I highly recommend both of those, but I have to say that Attachments might be my favorite. It's quirky. It's told through a different kind of format. They are emailing each other back and forth, some coworkers, and then there's some narrative in there also. The guy who is in charge of, he's supposed to be looking at the company emails and reprimanding people for being personal in them because it's only there for business. And he gets caught up in the story between these two girls, these two friends, and of course there's a love story there. So probably my favorite, Rainbow Rowell. That's hard to say because I would recommend any of her books. Whereas Eleanor and Park is more of a young adult, maybe high school story, and Fangirl is more a 20-something going to college story, Attachments is more for that young professional, like mid-20s to 30s. Another one that I went back and pulled off the shelf to talk to you about because it's by Erica Bauermeister. It's The School of Essential Ingredients. I had read this back in August of 2012, and I just put together that she is the author of The Scent Keeper. It's one of the Reese Book Club books, the Hello Sunshine Book Club books, and I really enjoyed it. And then I realized that The School of Essential Ingredients is by the same author. So I pulled it off and updated that review on Goodreads. This falls into that culinary novel that we were talking about, like a food novel, a culinary novel. It very much plays on the senses of taste and smell. And it's a great story that takes numerous stories and puts them together. I think there's a group of maybe 7 or 9, I'm not sure if it's going to tell me right away, 7 or 9 people who are part of a culinary class, and you hear each of their stories and how they intermingle. So it's just a good, comforting, fun read. It would be a good one to do during Thanksgiving, like during the month of November. There are 8 friends. I went back and added a review for Philip Pullman's The Golden Compass. On the front of this one, this is a paperback copy, and it's a major motion picture, holiday of 2007. And this came up because there is now a new series, and I watched the first episode, and it's very well done. I'm very happy with it. But this is his Dark Materials book number 1. Maybe 3 in the series. Want to say it's a trilogy. I've only read the first one, but very well done. When I read it, I just read it and then I looked up information. Like, this is back in 2005, and I was surprised that there was so much controversy over the book. And it's basically because it's kind of like when Harry Potter came out and people were really opposed to talking to kids about witchcraft and saying that there were things like magic that were out there and people were treating it as if it were true. And then when The Golden Compass came out, his Dark Materials, he has a lot of symbolism in his book about organized religion and the Catholic Church. That again, I read it and I wasn't pulling any of that stuff out. I was just reading it for fun. And then when I started reading those articles, I'm like, oh, I could see that. Okay, I could see where you would be offended by that. But I was also so surprised that Harry Potter was so famous and popular, and this series I had not heard a lot about back in 2005. Now, since then, I know it has a huge following, and it's basically because when you're talking about like Harry Potter and it's good and evil, but it focuses more on the good, I do feel like in his Dark Materials, it focuses a lot more on the corruption and the bad, and not like it glorifies that, but it's just a lot darker, and it's a lot darker from the very beginning. So if you've not yet read his Dark Materials, especially The Golden Compass, then I highly recommend, especially if you were a Harry Potter fan or you like fantasy. It is a children's series, but it's very complicated and heavy, and in a good way. And I apologize that I'm talking to you about a lot of these fall and Halloween books and it's over, but I'll just have to repin the video, I guess, next October so that you get a good reading list, but I'm just not getting to it. It's all I can say. But another book that I had read back in October of 2005, and then again, I think I listened to the audio in May of 2014, but it's Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is the classic one that I have. It's the Penguin edition, and really enjoyed it. I think I've talked about one of my favorite books is The Historian by Kostova, I believe is her name, which is part of the Dracula story also. And this gives you a lot of basis for that. So, I mean, obviously this came before The Historian. The Historian is much more readable than Dracula, but still one that I would highly recommend, especially for seasonal reading. So I read War of the Worlds back in 2004. So I threw out a new review for that, and the reason that one came to mind is because, again, there's a new series out there. I think most of us would remember in 2005 that Tom Cruise starred in a movie of the War of the Worlds, which was a good adaptation, but this is actually a longer series. I watched the first episode of it and I was very impressed. It's on Amazon. And to think that this book was serialized back in 1897 blows your mind when you're reading it. It's so forward thinking. So it was serialized in 1897, but then it was actually on the radio in 1938, I believe, as a radio program. And this is one that I book talked in my class, because if you'll remember, when they played it on the radio, some people actually panicked because they thought it was actually happening, and it's about alien invasion. So they just happened to turn the radio on, and there was this dramatization that they thought was a real news broadcast of America being invaded by aliens, and they panicked. So I just think it's a super interesting book. It's a super interesting story, and it's a good, readable, accessible classic. I don't think I have a copy of Waiting for Snow in Havana, but we do Memoir Mondays in room 134, and this is one that I book talked to my class, and I realized I didn't have a good Goodreads review out there, so I did also post that on my social media. It is by Carlos Eire, E-I-R-E, and I highly recommend it. It is a National Book Award winner, and it's one of those where we're talking about trying to find authentic voices that we're not so familiar with. It is his story of growing up in Cuba. I believe when he's 7 years old, he gets sent to maybe Chicago, and so you get to know what Cuba was like before Castro took over, and he tells not only his history, but some of the history of Cuba. So super interesting, super good memoir that I highly recommend. Somehow I did not have a Goodreads review out there for Halloweener by Dave Pilkey. This is a beautiful book that I highly recommend, again, during October, put on your calendar, but to read to your kids and for fun. It's a great little story. The illustrations are lovely. This is one that I pulled off of my bookshelves that I had bought for my son back in 1998, which was when he was born. And so obviously I read it to him before he knew what was happening, but that's okay because we enjoyed it year after that. And it's just a beautiful little book about this guy, Oscar, who is enjoying Halloween, and his friends are giving him a hard time, and something happens on Halloween night to change the way they feel about Oscar. When I pulled my Halloween and fall books to put on my mantle and talk to you about, Plum Spooky by Janet Ivanovich came up. It is a Stephanie Plum novel, but it's a Between the Numbers novel if you're familiar with her series. So she is, how would you classify these? These are crime fiction, but they're humorous crime fiction, maybe is how I would say it. You follow the antics of Stephanie Plum, who is who's a private detective who kind of just stumbled in on that. And with Private Detective, she's also a bounty hunter. And lots of great characters in the whole Stephanie Plum series. So again, give me a seasonal read and I will read it every time. I really enjoyed this. I read it back in 2014 during October, but I just did not put a review out there. So I know in one of my very first YouTube videos, I book talked The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. So I'm not going to say a lot more because I do already have it in that video. But I read this back in 2010, and then our book club read it in 2011. And I know it's hefty. I get it, okay? I get it. I'm assuming if you're watching my YouTube videos talking about books, you are a book lover though, and that you appreciate a good read. One of my all-time favorite reads, a great modern telling of the Dracula story and how it interacts with one particular family. I love it. A lot of history in there. Yes, it's a fictionalized novel, but a lot of good history in there, woven in there with a lot of superstitious talk. So trying not to wax on too much, since I know I've already talked to you back in April about this book, but put it on your calendar, read it during the October Halloween season. It's so, so good. So another book that came up because there are new adaptations out there, Netflix is doing The Haunting of Bly Manor. It is a retelling of The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. So you can see this again is a very accessible classic. When you're talking about The Turn of the Screw, it is only, where am I at? It's only this much even of the book. So still super tiny. And I have watched some of the Netflix, The Haunting of Bly Manor, and God, so well done, so well done. Creepy, very good. So I read this back in 2016 and the review is from them, but I did want to tell you that that series is out there and well worth the watch. Another book that I recommended during our Memoir Mondays, and I noticed I didn't have a review, so I added that out there on social media here lately, is Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. Super good read, highly recommend it. I like all of his books, but this is the first one that really introduced us to Mitch Albom. And it is very philosophical and just a good recentering novel about what's important. Here's another one that I think I've already recommended to you in a previous YouTube video, so I'm not going to go into it too much. But The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. Again, great seasonal read. You're talking, they're not necessarily zombies, but they're zombies. And they're children, not necessarily children. So it is rather complicated, but putting it back out there because the movie is on, what's it on? Maybe Amazon or Netflix? I'm not sure. It's on one of those mediums though, and the movie is terrifying and it's really good, really good. This is one of those books that you are so close to the end and you're like, I don't even know how you're gonna be able to end this. Like, there's only one way to end this. There's only one way. There is no way out. And the author shows their mastery by giving you a different ending that you never would have come up with. So in the book, in the movie, super well done. But settle in because it's quite a ride. So I did talk about this in the student book club chat number 2 and the adult book club chat number 2. So I'm not going to go real deep into it, but I love it. So back in February of 2018, I did the review on Goodreads for Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. My sister also invited me to go to a chat where J.D. Vance was speaking, and super good. I enjoyed his talk. I enjoyed the book. Our book club also discussed this one, so wanted to throw that out there. It is coming to Netflix soon, so be on the lookout for that one. So I already talked about this one back in July when I was doing some of the videos, but it came back up. So again, as a seasonal read and one that I've really focused on in the class. So I'm putting it back out there. Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. You can see it was one of the Newbery Award winners. So also highly recommend that one as a seasonal read. I've talked about Alex Erickson before. The Death by Coffee is the first one in the series. It's a bookstore cafe mystery. And the one that's the seasonal read this month is Death by Pumpkin Spice. So you can see I love the covers. I think they're really well done. It's a good cozy series. It's a good one to listen to. I talk about Alex Erickson in the adult video number 4 and then episode 13. This is number 3 in the series. Erickson is another one that I've gone back and read the whole series and I'm trying to finish. And once I finish, then I'll do a separate video just of his series. So when we're talking about Penny Reid, she has the Knitting in the City series, which we are up to about number 7 on those. And then she has the Winston Brothers series, which again, part of the storyline comes off of the spinoff of Knitting in the City. And that one, I think I'm down to about number 7 in that series too. And then I just finished the Rugby series, The Hooker and the Hermit. I did that one on my ebook. But I haven't had a chance to review that one yet, so I'll put that out there soon. There's a Smarty Pants Romance sampler that you can get if you go to Amazon. It was just released in the spring 2020, and that's not only Penny Reid, but the other people that write underneath her, under the imprint of Smarty Pants Romance. I know I've reviewed for you the Park Ranger one that I really enjoyed. It was the girl who was walking on the Appalachian Trail and then ends up with a park ranger. So, I'm not sure what episode that one is in, but that's written not by Penny Reid, but under the Smarty Pants Romance imprint. If you go to Goodreads, you can print out her series. So this kind of helps you keep track of them because it is a little bit complicated because she's got so many different series and they have some of the same characters in them. And if you go to her website, she has a newsletter that you can do, and then she has these extras like this coloring page for Knitting in the City, which is really cute. So in order to keep Cleo Coyle's books, if you go to her website, she actually has a checklist. So it has the cover of each of her books and a little synopsis about each one. We'll review her books in a separate video. And currently I'm up to number 11, being able to read those in order. So my next one is A Brew to a Kill. And I already read Holiday Buzz, which is number 12, but that would be a great seasonal read. Currently she has 17 in the Coffee House series. Kate Carlisle is another one that if you go to her website, she has all of her books in a nice printable PDF. So currently she has 14 in that Bibliophile mystery series, and she has 7 in the Fixer Up mystery series, and then she has a number of other books too. So right now, according to Goodreads, for Alex Erickson, we have 6 books in that series, only one of which that I have not been able to read yet, which is Death by Espresso. So that's my next one on his list. But you are coming up on Christmas, and he does have a seasonal read, Death by Eggnog, which is number 5 in the series. His Dark Materials is free on Roku right now. If you have a smart TV, Roku is sharing that for free, so you can watch that series. I've only watched the first episode, but it was well worth my time. There's also a 2004 movie that's well done. The War of the World series is on Amazon Prime. I just dropped off I think that I was able to show them to you in the last video, but the 2 books that I got from the public library, and that is Nancy Pearl, who calls herself America's Librarian, her writer's book, and then also the Big Friendship book that's by the podcast girls that do Call Your Girlfriend. So super cool podcast. I've listened to it for a long time, and now they actually have a book that they wrote together. And then Nancy Pearl is with someone else. I can't remember who the other person is that's writing the book, and they interviewed authors about the writing process. So I enjoyed flipping through both of those books from the public library. I don't have any books for the book haul this time around. I've not really been out and shopping like I was. I know the last one I probably made up for it anyway, because that was all my books from the book haul for summer. So there is quite a bit new book news for the Alex Erickson series. He has a new one in the Bookstore Cafe Mystery. It's called Death by French Roast. That just came out. I shared an article on Facebook that was 27 books to read for a cozy night, and there's some really good ones on here that I've enjoyed, and then some that have been on my reading list for a while. I know just in my last video I recommended to you Louise Penny's Still Life, and also that it is a movie on Acorn. They have The Great Alone on here by Kristen Hanna and The Bookshop on the Corner by Jenny Colgan. I'm pretty sure I've talked to you about The Bookshop on the Corner by Jenny Colgan. It's a book that I had reviewed, and it's also a movie that's out there. And then The Great Alone, I'm not sure that I've talked to you about. I'm not sure that I would really call that a cozy book. It's pretty dark, but it's the one where it's set in Alaska, and it tells a girl's story that is there, and she's pretty isolated. So maybe that's why they're calling it cozy. But that list is shared for you on Facebook, and then it's also linked below. I shared a fabulous article by Jesmyn Ward. I have book talked her books on here for you. She wrote an article on Vanity Fair on Witness and Despair, a personal tragedy followed by a pandemic. Her husband actually died of COVID, and it's a very frank telling of how that transpired. So she not only tells you the story of her husband going through this and what their experience was, but then how she and her young children then have dealt with that loss during a pandemic when they're not able to be surrounded by family. So super good article. It was published in Vanity Fair, and I've shared the link with you. Our last Talk Banned Books Week was the end of September. I didn't get a chance to talk to you before that, but I shared a link of several books that are covered in that Banned Books Week, and see if you can recognize some of these as your favorite. I know several of them are ones that I've covered on my YouTube videos. There's a remake out there of Roald Dahl's The Witches. I shared for you an article, 11 Scrumdiddlyicious Roald Dahl Facts, to celebrate his new adaptation of The Witches that's out there. I think HBO is the one who's actually doing the movie. It's been shared on a number of different streaming platforms, so hopefully we'll be able to watch it on one of those soon. Jacqueline Woods also has a new book out. It sounds really interesting. This is one that I really want to get to preview. It's called Before the Ever After, and it documents a father's decline once they realize that he has played professional football and there's some concussion problems and he starts deteriorating. So it's supposed to be dealing with that particular theme, but from a kid's point of view. So it'll be interesting. She always writes good books, but that's definitely one that I want to preview before I get to talk too much about it. The last article that I wanted to mention to you is A Beowulf for Our Moment. It's by Ruth Franklin. It was published in August of this year, and I shared it with you. I'm pretty sure it's from Vanity Fair, but it is, again, well worth reading, especially if you're an English person. If you have any interest in the Grendel and the Beowulf story, which we all know is like the earliest story out there, and it's kind of a how it applies to today, and it's very relevant. I'm also sharing with you down below, and I shared on social media, Matthew McConaughey is reading from John Grisham's new book. I've talked to you about John Grisham numerous times in my videos. He's one of my favorite authors. He has a new book out called A Time for Mercy. It's a continuation of A Time to Kill, which is one of his earliest novels. Matthew McConaughey reads from it in this YouTube clip. I'll link it above actually too. And I know that John Grisham has asked Matthew McConaughey to play in the new movie. So that's interesting that he's already putting that out there. I don't know that I've had a chance to talk to you about Marilyn Robinson's Of Gilead book. I love that book. And she has a second one that has just come out. I've not had a chance to read it yet. But it's the story of Jack. I think it's actually called Jack, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a follow-up to that Gilead book. And that's been out a long time for her to just now be putting out a continuation. But I'm super excited about that one. I have it on hold at the library. Earlier, I talked to you about the fact that I just read Jason Reynolds' A Long Way Down. And I'm sharing with you a clip where he is connecting young people as his part of the National Ambassador for the Young Adults Literature. And he is working with StoryCorps to help young people write their own stories. I shared a link with you to Hello Sunshine, where they are giving you an opportunity to read an excerpt from Ruth Ware's new book, One by One. I book talked for you, and I also shared an article about A.J. Fenn. Remember, he is the author of The Woman in the Window, and his story is crazier than fiction. I shared that really long article with you a couple of videos back, and now they are saying that the rights have been bought, and they are going to film The Woman in the Window, and it'll be out in 2021, so be on the lookout for that. If you're an Amazon Prime member, remember your Amazon Prime reads. You get free books every month. And for the last couple of times that I've gone on there to look and see what's available, Mindy Kaling's books are free currently on there. She's a modern comedian. She's had quite a bit to say after the election projected results that are out. So you might be interested to go and look at her books. They're free on Amazon Prime if you're a Prime member. They are turning Herbert's Dune into a movie also. That is one that I've not read. He's one of the fathers of science fiction, so I need to go back and read that. It's a classic science fiction book, but I've not done that, but I will try and do that before the movie comes out. You may remember that they've turned a number of Agatha Christie's books into movies here currently, and Death on the Nile is scheduled to come out in December. I'll share a link to that trailer up above. The book Enola Holmes, which is a reimagining that if Sherlock had a sister, her name is Enola. That is a book by Springer, and they have turned that into a Netflix movie. We watched it. We both really enjoyed it. I want to say it's maybe an hour and a half long. It was because it is a movie. It's not a series, but it was really enjoyable, especially if you're a Sherlock fan. I know I book talked for you the Dan Brown books, and they are currently on the Sci-Fi Network. If that's something that you have access to, they're on demand, and also they've been just playing them quite a bit frequently. And The Meg was on last night, and I know I book talked that to you too, so I'm not sure if you can get that one on demand, but it has been playing. So normally they'll loop those movies like for a week or so you might want to be on the lookout for that. I've talked to you about Du Maurier's Rebecca, and that has been released on Netflix just here in the last month. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but it's on my to-be watch list. And I think the last book to movie adaptation that I have talked about since the last time we've been on the video is Jan Karen's At Home in Mitford. I love the book series. It's a good, comforting, just really feel-good series. It takes place in a small community where you get to know the people. There's probably 6 or 7 in the series. Hallmark turned it into a movie. They combine, I would say maybe the first 2-3 books, they combine those into the movie. I was super disappointed by it. You know, I still say watch it just because it's watching how somebody adapts the book to the movie, but definitely a little disappointing on that one for as much as I love the series. I did share with you some other BookTube people's books to read in the fall. There's a couple that I've watched here lately. They're just really super good, so I'm linking those. I'm also sharing a link to Hank Green. He reads The Raven on the Poetry Foundation. I'm not sure if I've talked to you about that resource, but I've been using it a lot in my classes this year, and they have several famous people that are reading poetry, and Hank Green reading The Raven is spectacular. If you follow Lip Sync, you also may have seen that Mike Rowe is reading The Telltale Heart. It is just an audio, it's not a video of him like the Hank Green reading the Raven. So it is just Mike Rowe's voice, but you know, he's got a great voice for television. He always has. And he is reading The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, and it's phenomenal. I am not going to do a what I'm reading now just because I feel like the video's gone on longer than it should have at this point. I'm going to have to edit quite a bit. So I'm going to leave that out for this time. I haven't made any coffee shop stops since the last video. I have been sharing some podcast episodes, so I have a couple new ones for you. I talked to you about picking up at the public library Nancy Pearl's new book, and she has a podcast that I always listen to. And there is someone who comes on and actually interviews her for her own podcast and the guy that she's writing the book with. So I'm sharing that episode. It was really good and insightful. There's a new one I've been listening to called All Things Cozy. It's more of a chat. It's definitely one that you can just play and you can dip in and out of. If you miss something, it's not like you're going to not be able to keep up. There's no like storyline going on. There are a couple of friends that are just talking and sharing their recommendations. My shirt is the My Favorite Murderer shirt. I've talked to you about that podcast before, and they had mentioned a particular case that I saw the movie version that is on Netflix. It's called The Frozen Ground. We watched it quite a while ago, but they talk about that particular case on one of the episodes of My Favorite Murder, and the movie is very well done, so highly recommend The Frozen Ground on Netflix. I'm not sure if I've talked to you about Cabot Cove Confidential, but Murder, She Wrote there, I can't even believe how many podcasts are out there about that one, but to me, that's the best one that's out there right now. It is, I think it's 2 sisters and a friend, or 3 sisters and a friend, something like that. They take each episode of Murder, She Wrote and then talk about it, and there's several things that they pull out of each one. So it's very humorous too. It is very tongue-in-cheek. But if you're a Murder, She Wrote fan, it's definitely worth listening to. Again, you can dip in and out of it. It's not like you're going to miss something like extraordinary. And then the last podcast that I shared with you was Crime Junkie. Not a particular episode, but someone had introduced me to that because I do like the My Favorite Murder, and Crime Junkie I think probably even came before that. But very well done. It's just way more serious than My Favorite Murder. My Favorite Murder does more than just talk about a particular case. You get to know the 2 girls that host the program. There's some humor in there. They like to talk about TV shows that they also like, or what's happening particularly in their life. Whereas Crime Junkie, I feel like, specifically talks just about the one crime, and it's one lady, and it's probably more edited. Whereas My Favorite Murder, they just run it. So I do recommend that one. That was a good recommendation from somebody else. So I'm happy to be your friendly librarian. Thank you for tuning in. All the books that I've talked about you today have been reviewed on my Goodreads, so make sure you meet up with me there. Everything is always linked to my Facebook page, so connect with me on Facebook. Remember, you can easily get access to any of the books that I've talked about for free at your public library. If your library, like ours, is shut down currently during COVID because we're in the red, whatever that's called, you can still go online. Our library is still doing curbside pickup. My kids all have library cards, and they tune in with their Libby app, and they are able to get ebooks for free and have access to those. That has been a godsend this year. So let's be social. Hit the subscribe and like button so that I know that you're enjoying the videos. Let me know. What do you want to read? What are you reading? What do you like? Comment, email, message me. Keep in touch. Enjoy.